Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, presented by Superbook Sports. Taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. D-Mac is back with the Cats. His travels are over. How are you, D-Mac? What's going on?
I'm good. I'm happy to be home in beautiful Colorado because I love Colorado and had a wonderful, lengthy summer vacation, seeing my kid play baseball and hanging out in Pacifica, California. It is not a vacation spot for everybody, okay? I mean, it's mostly cold and overcast and whatever, but for me, it was great and had such a wonderful time. So came back early yesterday and back in the mix. Here we go. Just a couple weeks till training camp. And I want to get into all of it, but I had a relatively boring weekend for my last weekend. It's interesting having a son with a serious girlfriend. It's that's an interesting one, Rachel.
Okay, why? I need to know from like a parent's perspective because obviously my dad had his daughter dating in like a serious relationship. So I'm curious.
I saw my son plenty.
Okay.
So I'm not arguing about seeing my son, but when push came to shove on the last day, he shoved towards the girlfriend, not towards dad, which was fine.
Yeah.
It was fine. And but she's wonderful and I love her too. And just two young people in love, Rachel, like you and Anthony, two young people in love.
I know. And trying to plan a wedding. We went to wedding venues this weekend. It was literally our entire weekend, which it is really fun. I was talking to D-Mac before the show started. It's just really expensive and you don't realize, like, I always kind of wanted this DIY wedding where like I could kind of do all these things, right? Like I could find the best caterer that I want. But nowadays when you do it, you have to go by the venue. So like they have certain caterers, certain bar companies. You have to have like this planner that they recommend. Like you can't really DIY your own wedding anymore unless I guess you just go wherever. Maybe we'll just go into a national park and just somehow do it. I don't know.
Well, my advice was when it's simple or complex, always make the more simple choice with the wedding. Which
I will say, I've taken that to heart a little bit, maybe in a different context than you're talking, but there's one venue we looked at where like everything is on the grounds. Everybody could stay on the grounds. It's absolutely beautiful. So it's like more simple, but at the same time, to be able to do that, it also does cost a little bit more money. So we're playing pros and cons. But it is really fun.
I don't know how much money you have to mess around with on this venture. So, I mean, I'm hesitant to say anything because everything's relative to how much money you got to spend. So, I mean, let your checkbook lead your heart, I suppose, in some examples.
One of my best friends, she's so cute. She's getting married in February, and I was talking to her yesterday because I was just like going off. I'm like, this is so stupid, like yada, yada, yada. And she's like, at the end of the day, you just end up signing the check. So just do whatever you want to do. And I'm like, that's probably true. You can like stress all you want, but at the end of the day, you're just going to write it because you want your day to be perfect. So it's kind of
I don't mean to be flip about it. I don't mean to be flip about it, but money is money. And you have your whole lives to pay back those credit card debts, I suppose, or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I got engaged on a low budget. I got married on a low budget. We did spend money on our honeymoon, and that worked out great. But, so where are you at? Maybe I should never give any advice. Just where are you at? What got done this weekend?
We have narrowed it down. We visited 3 venues. We've narrowed down to 2 kind of, and then we're going to go visit some more this upcoming weekend too. We have like our 1 and 2 for sure. And then we don't think that the other ones can beat it, but we don't want to leave any options out there. So we kind of did our top ones this weekend. And then we're going to just see if there's any that can kind of give us the same vibe, but maybe for a little bit lesser price. So we'll see.
Up in the mountains?
Up in the mountains. We're all over the place. Idaho Springs, Vail, Basalt. We're grateful. Like we are literally all over the place. So it's fun. It's exciting.
Basalt. That's a good one. Basalt.
I know.
That's a sneaky good one right there. I don't know where that ranks, but
We're
That's been one of
staying
my.
out of Aspen because Aspen is just for dinner alone is a little expensive, but
I
Basalt.
get it, but Basalt's sneaky cool because it's like 35 minutes outside of Aspen. It's near Glenwood Springs. It's Carbondale's right there. It's absolutely spectacular in terms of just like everything. And it's the last small town really before Aspen. Sneaky good Basalt. I love Basalt.
Thank you. Don't
that
spend more on the wedding than you do the honeymoon was the best advice we didn't take. Appreciate that, Tommy. And do what you can. Don't go into debt for a wedding. I agree with that. We will not be going into
I don't know about that. I mean, go into debt that don't kill yourself. You don't want to take out like a student loan on this thing. But I mean, if it takes a little bit, I'd say this: if you could reasonably pay back whatever the debt is within a year, if that's reasonable, I'd say go for it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And my fiance is fantastic at spending money, so I'm going to trust him when he guides us through this adventure for sure. But we're also very lucky that we've got friends and family that are fantastic.
Are we closer to a date?
October of next year, probably.
We've moved out of September. We're into October.
Yeah, just because that's when the leaves typically tend to change. And so that's what I've always wanted. Like growing up, I want the leaves to be beautiful and golden and that's like one of the biggest perks of Colorado. So that's one of my top ones. So fingers crossed.
Okay.
For that.
All right.
Lots of wedding updates to come here on Coffee Break. I promise.
All right.
I love being able to talk to everybody. But while I was visiting venues, DMAC was traveling. Lots of Broncos players were hosting their own camps ahead of training camp. So Pat Surtain, Javonte Williams, Greg Dulcich was doing one. And then we've also got Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson all hanging out as we will bring in our very own Andrew Mason. Good morning, Mace. How are you?
I'm all right. How are y'all doing?
I'm good. Mace, real quick, wedding talks. Any wedding advice you got for me? Because I'm loving hearing everything.
Okay. First of all, at some point as the wedding nears, you and your spouse-to-be probably will have a huge fight.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That'll happen. It's going to feel awful. There's going to be a moment where you're questioning everything. You have to just get past that. That's a natural part of it because it's a great event, but it is an extremely high stress event. It does test a relationship. So just be prepared. Be prepared for that. Just be prepared to kind of work through it and focus on the bigger picture, and then you're going to be okay. I love the fact that you're doing it in the fall. Spring weddings are the best ones, in my opinion. I did a spring wedding. It's tremendous.
And Mace, what was your big fight about?
You know what? Gosh.
Mace, how long have you been married?
14 years.
Oh, congratulations.
I don't even remember the specifics of it, DMAC. That's the thing. Like,
but it was something.
Yeah. But it was, but I had a lot going on. It was right before the draft that year, so I was really busy, and I think that probably had something to do with it because I was, you can't stop working. You're right. I mean, that's the other thing. Your life continues to go on.
I feel guilty a little bit that I'm like October because it's obviously football season, but I'm like, you know what? At the end of the day, you also got to like live out your childhood dreams, and like there will always be another football season. I'm trying to keep that in mind because I do feel slightly guilty on it.
Okay, but the thing is, though, you're gonna step on some toes regardless with football season because are you having it on Saturday or Friday or a Sunday?
I think a Friday. It's going to be a little bit cheaper, but then two, we can all do, like, we want to do a brunch the day after with everybody, and we can have football on in the background, and then everybody can get home before Sunday for football. I'm thinking a little bit ahead for sure when it comes to the football.
That is so smart. Well, hold on, Mace. She's violating one of my rules right off the bat. Don't worry about everybody the next day. I told you that.
But that's just for me too.
No. You got all the build up the night before the wedding itself. Rachel, I swear to God, just get out of there. Get out.
I'll shut Twitter down real quick. Don't worry about that.
I'll say this though, like generally, I admire you wanting to have something on the Saturday morning and gather. People tend to take care of themselves the morning after.
Thank you.
I did hang out with some of the people who were there the following morning, but it was not something organized. It was very loose and organic, and it just kind of happened, and we end up, having, it wasn't really a brunch. We just were all kind of together, hanging out in a parking lot, talking for a little while. I mean,
and it'll be very much a like whoever just comes like essentially down or whatever, because we will have a lot of people who are traveling in. So just to be like, okay, like thank you so much, see everybody later, because there's a lot of time, and we're excited to we're having a smaller group. Maybe DMAC doesn't think so, but anyways, that's all besides the point. Like I said, lots of wedding talk to come, I promise everybody. But Mace, what's going on? Where are you right now?
I am just north of Brainerd, Minnesota.
What are you doing?
Yeah, like it's a family trip, extended family. So there's like 8 people in this big house here.
Andrew Mason, are you on vacation right now?
Not real. I mean, I'm writing stories and I'm popping on from time to time. I'd call this kind of a it's a little semi-vacation, basically. But
well, we're honored to have you on with us this morning. So thank you so much.
It's not formally filed in the calendar. I'm working remotely, basically. So
Rachel, he had nothing better to do in Brainerd today. There wasn't. What do you want to Mace out on a jet ski or something today?
Probably just be a pool. I mean, there's lakes all over the place, and if you know the film Fargo, you're familiar with Brainerd.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't watched a TV show. It was all I could do yesterday to not just start to get into Brainerd saying I need to find a place where we can get some pancakes here, And if you've watched Fargo,
he's a funny looking fella. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hey, Normie, how's the fricassee? Hey, you going out ice fishing?
Pretty good.
Lunch. Okay.
Okay, pretty good. Yeah.
This is the moment Rachel's sad she doesn't watch a lot of movies because she's clearly missing the inside jokes, but the accents will make you laugh. So we'll get on.
He's a funny looking fella, yeah. Doesn't fit well in the wood chipper.
Oh, funny, yeah.
All right.
Mace, break it down.
Funny looking how? Oh, just in a general sort of way,
Mace,
you lied to me, Mr. Underdark.
Biggest news coming out of Broncos, it seemed like this weekend, was Javonte Williams saying that he should be ready to go for training camp for week 1. How realistic, honestly, is that? You hear from a player and you're like, okay, that sounds really good. But at the end of the day, the Broncos will kind of make that decision.
They will, but at the same time, again, obviously we kind of have the muzzles on us, what we can actually say that we saw, but he looked to be pretty mobile when we saw him out there for OTAs and minicamp. All things considered, considering the nature of his injury, because it wasn't just a torn ACL, there was another torn ligament in there. There was further damage. Seeing him at that level indicated that he would be ready for at least a reasonable role in week 1. I imagine, though, that you'll probably see a fair amount of Samaje Perine early, but unless there's a setback, I got to put that caveat on there, but unless there's a setback, I think Javonte Williams is going to get the first carry and then in week 1 get the majority of the reps. Maybe it might be a slight majority, like 51-49 type of split between him and Samaje Perine, but I think he's going to be ready to go. And again, we always say focus on what they do, not what they say. We're sitting here in the middle of July. Now, nobody signed Dalvin Cook, but there is no indication of any interest in Dalvin Cook. And I think that tells you what they think of how Javonte Williams has come along. Now, that being said, they can take their time. They can be patient. They can see Javonte as they put on the pads and get him into full contact. And if they are a little bit skittish about what they see, there are going to be running backs available as you get into training camp. I mean, there's plenty there still on the market, but right now they've seen enough from Javonte Williams to where they feel like they can say, okay, with what we've got, we're cool. We're comfortable with this. And so I think what he's talking about yesterday, I think based on what we saw and what I've gathered, that it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's good to go, at least to be the number 1 running back in week 1. If not, maybe not getting 25 carries, 25 carries, but getting the majority of the workload.
I think it would be remarkable to have him back for week 1. I'm not holding my breath on that. I understand the reasons of optimism, and it was certainly good to hear him speak. By the way, I cannot tell you, I am such a big fan of free football camps that are just one day with the pros. I think that is wonderful. I think paying, and just as little on my pedestal here, paying for a one-day football camp is a ripoff. Okay. So, and I think these were free camps that all these guys were doing. I am there's no reason to pay for a one-day camp. There's nothing you can learn and get out of it in a one-day camp. If you're on a week-long camp that there's real instruction and there's real things going on, well, okay, sure, I can understand that. But a one-day camp, they should always be free. And I do believe that's what these were. So I commend the Broncos players for putting on those camps. I think that is just such a wonderful thing to do. And I saw Javonte talking, and I'm hopeful, but to think that he's going to be good to go by week 1, I don't know, Mace and Rachel. I don't rush. I guess that's my big hope. There's no need to rush, so don't.
On that note, I think that the players really enjoy it too, hosting these camps. And I think that they really love and kind of remember being kids and like wanting those experiences too. So I love that they do those free camps too. I think it's incredible. But I think let alone just the physical part of this whole journey for Javonte, I'm more like, okay, the mental aspect of this, of getting out there and getting hit in multiple different ways. Like that can be really tough. But he says, like, you know what? That's all I've ever known is aggressive play. Like that's exactly what I want to go out there and do. But I'm less worried about the physical and more about the mental when you're actually in a game is totally different than what we're seeing in mini camp or even training camp.
Yeah, and I think training camp's the first step in that, and we know this is going to be a very physical training camp. Maybe not. We're not talking about old school guys doing the Oklahoma drill like back in the day, but this is going to be something different than last year. And so you want to see how he holds up to contact. You want to see, on that knee. It's not just cutting on that knee, but at some point you're going to take a hit when you've got that leg is the one on the ground bearing the weight, right?
Yeah.
And that's a significant stress test for whether he can handle it. And so, Matt, he's done all he can do. And I would say he's probably done more than anyone expected that he could do to this point. So he's checked all the boxes he can check with what he's been able to do. The first big test is going to be training camp. But the thing is, you look on the market right now, Cook's still out there. Ezekiel Elliott's still out there. If you want to go for a more budget-friendly option cap-wise, a guy like Marlon Mack, who was productive late last season for the Broncos, is still out there. There are quality running backs that you can find on very short notice here. So I think if they brought in Dalvin Cook, it would make everyone feel good and everyone would be excited. But if Javonte Williams is ready to handle the load, what are you saying to him at that point? So sometimes you have to kind of balance that with just, okay, let's just get the best people in there. And so, and the fact that you've got multiple available backs who could step in an emergency and be reasonably productive. Last year the Broncos got Latavius Murray in October, right? Yeah. So you can find running backs. So why not just take this moment, those first few weeks of training camp as you build up the full contact and see if he continues to check off the items on the checklist and continues to make the progress. If he has, you feel great. You've got Samaje Perine behind him who's reliable. You feel pretty good going into the season. If he stalls, you're going to have options to bring guys in that can be productive just in case.
Yeah, and you're making the right point that there's no rush here. There really isn't. They're going to be fine.
So let me play devil's advocate on this exact same note then. You're Javonte Williams. You know that there's quite a few really good backs. You know the Broncos have bought into you essentially. We also know that the league can move very quickly. Are you wanting to be like, hey, I'm good to go back out there because I don't want to lose my starting job of, hey, another guy comes in all of a sudden? Like, I'm just playing devil's advocate here a little bit, you guys.
Oh, I don't think there's anything more brutal for an elite young athlete than to sit out a year like he just did. I think it's absolutely brutal. I think you come up with all sorts of insecurities, whether they're real or imaginary. And I'm sure he was. The vast majority of time, you've got to protect these guys from themselves.
Yeah, that's a great point, D-Mac. And I think the other thing also, with running back specifically, you got that 4-year contract that you're on because you only have a 5th-year option when you're a second-round pick. You got the 4-year contract, and you lose basically 25% of that. I mean, we're sitting here right now. It's kind of hard to believe, but time flies. Javonte Williams is halfway through his rookie deal. So you may sometimes have to save him from himself, but the clock on running backs, even on top shelf ones, winds so fast that, I mean, that really he's looking at this and saying, okay, if I'm going to get it back, I've got to do it this year, because if not, then the Broncos are probably starting to shop for a new number 1 running back next offseason in the draft. That becomes a position that you start looking at in the 2nd and 3rd round, which kind of is a sweet spot now for finding good running backs. It's not the 1st round. It's you get into day 2, even in day 3, you're able to find a lot of quality. So he knows that. I don't want him to rush back, but at the same time, you kind of understand why he's putting himself on this kind of demanding timeline here, because he knows that if he doesn't show this year that he can be the number 1 back coming off of that injury, he knows the window is going to close. It's the reality of the position.
I was going to say, look at Zeke. Could you all imagine us, 3 years ago saying that Zeke wouldn't be picked up? Like, everybody was doing this, talking about Zeke. It's kind of just crazy how short that lifespan can be. D-Mac, you go like this. Why do you say that?
I can imagine any running back past the age of 28 not playing in the league. I don't care who it is. That is just the life expectancy of a running back in the NFL. So Zeke is no more surprising to me than absolutely anybody else. Period. The end.
I mean, we look at Derrick Henry is the best running back of this generation. He's the only running back that I look at and say, okay, that dude's going into Canton, but he's going to get there. He'll get there because of how dominant he was, but his numbers aren't going to be in the class of anybody in the generations that precede him as far as great running backs, because he's not going to get the chance to last that long. He's only lasted as long as he has, A, because Tennessee underused him early in his career, and B, because the dude is an absolute freak of nature and humanity in terms of how he can take a pounding. But even now you're seeing that clock is ticking loudly on him out in Tennessee.
Well, listen, if you're any good, you're going to come out of college a year early. So you're going to be 21, maybe 22. Okay. By the time you're 28, you would have got to a 2nd-year contract. You would have had 6 years in the NFL, 4 years in high school, 3 years in college. I mean, you're talking about a pounding of over 10 years of taking hits on your body as a running back. I mean, that's kind of it. So that's why I like what the Broncos are doing. I wouldn't spend necessarily a lot of money on Dalvin Cook. I don't think it's, some sort of secret deal. And there's a couple of young guys. You got to see them out there. There are a couple of young guys out with the Broncos right now. They're like, whoa, who's that dude? And
Jaleel McLaughlin, remember that name. Jaleel McLaughlin, remember that name.
Jaleel McLaughlin, he's number one. He's 5'9", maybe, 180, and he's just like a missile. He really is. And they like what they've seen, rightfully so. And you have P. Ryan, and you'll have Javonte coming back. And like Mace pointed out, Latavius Murray was picked off the scrap heap. They made him go back to England twice. So, I mean, we kind of go on and on and on about this position. The highest paid running back is Christian McCaffrey in the NFL right now. And you've got to be some sort of weird unicorn. And even Christian has gotten hurt. Christian may have got the last big running back salary contract ever. I'm not even lying about that. He may have got the last big one ever.
That would be nuts. But he's like a unicorn too. I feel like, no offense to some of the other ones.
He could do other things.
Yeah.
He's and Deebo Samuel. The fact that they have Deebo Samuel and Christian on the same team is is pretty wild. I don't know how else the Niners are looking, Mace, but that 1-2 sort of hybrid punches. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Are they a deep run playoff team, the 49ers?
They can be. Nobody has the defensive personnel to match up to the two of them when they're on the field. It's like if you've got two high-level pass-catching tight ends. Like, it's one reason why, among the many things I want to see the Broncos explore, is packages with both Alberto and Dulcich on the field, because
absolutely
defenses don't have the personnel to cover both of them adequately. No defense has the personnel to cover both Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey adequately. The issue is staying healthy. Frankly, Rachel and D-Mac, I thought Carolina would have converted McCaffrey to a wide receiver a couple of years ago when they had him. And because the only way to kind of sustain that, when he got that big contract, I'm thinking to myself, great, the only way you can rationalize that contract is if you get him out of the running back position where he's taking so many hits. They never did that, and they end up trading him. They got a decent collection of draft picks back, but relatively speaking, it was pennies on the dollar given the talent that they surrendered in trading Christian McCaffrey.
Ooh, it's going to be interesting. How much? Yeah. Well, okay, so actually, let's just go back to this point. You say over 28 running back doesn't surprise you. And you've always said young quarterbacks. Is there an age that you would put on a quarterback?
Oh, no. I mean, you get a young quarterback to develop them, to keep them for 15 to 18 years. Yeah. Quarterbacks you get the right quarterback, they're going to go forever. It's awesome. That's why they're so unbelievably valuable to draft in the first place, because first you get 5 years where it totally is pennies on the dollar. I mean, it is just cheap to get one of these guys because you can spend money all other places. And then when you finally have to make that crazy $400 million commitment, which is like the going rate, it seems now, you got one of those guys. Can you find one of those guys? Well, the only way you're going to find one of those guys is to take a chance on guys. That's it. The end. You cannot count on just picking up these guys in free agency. I mean, you have to be insanely lucky to get one of these guys through draft or through trade or free agency. Insanely lucky. They're gonna come with other baggage for the most part. And even Peyton Manning, who we were so lucky to have, the baggage that we had with Peyton Manning was only 4 years. That's it. You only got him for 4 years. So everybody has baggage aside from a younger quarterback. It is stunning to me that this is not more obvious to more people at this point. I even have Cecil Lammey and Andrew Mason agreeing with me about Justin Fields. I mean,
what's happening in the world?
Yeah, I mean, and the problem is you hate making that argument because Pat Surtain is an excellent player, but stop it, D-Mac, stop it. But
in relative value, I'll add in the words he wants to play.
No, it's not just that. It's not just relative value. It's if you had Justin Fields, you didn't have to surrender the collection of draft capital and players to get Russell Wilson. And so, like, for example, like the alternate path that Cecil and I went down, we said, okay, in the 2022 draft, you're picking Charles Cross at tackle, right? Then in 2023, you're not having to write a check for $85 million to Mike McGlinchey because you have Charles Cross, and then you're spending that elsewhere. And, oh, by the way, you still had your first and second round picks. So, how does a Bijan Robinson at running back strike you late in the first round, right? Along with Javonte Williams. I mean, think of that one too. Young running back punch. I mean, you start going down a path where I can't imagine that the Broncos roster overall isn't significantly stronger.
Right. And that's
Fields.
Why Surtain wasn't a safe pick. He was a wildly risky pick. It might have seemed safe because, he's going to be so good, but it was wildly risky because it was begging the question, well, what if it doesn't work out at quarterback? Because who was the quarterback at the time? Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock is the answer to that question. So your safety in picking Surtain hinges. This is wild. You want to talk risky. It hinges on the success of Teddy Bridgewater and a second-round pick in Drew Lock with a coach, Fangio, who never wanted Lock in the first place because Lock was an ego pick of John Elway. Elway wanted to take Lock in the first round. He was talked out of it, and then it was an ego pick to make John feel good in the second round. It was about as dumb as you can get. They would have been so much better off had they just gone with John Elway's initial instincts and drafted Drew Lock in the top 10. Seriously. At least they would have had a quarterback to be committed to. And if it didn't work out with them, you could just rinse and repeat. And you wouldn't have had to give up everything else that you gave up. You could have just drafted Fields the next year or 2 years later, whatever my time frame actually is, because theoretically you're falling apart. What you gave up for Russell Wilson and Sean Payton is, like Mace just very smartly pointed out, was left tackles, running backs, another cornerback, and guys,
an edge rusher. I mean, you need an edge rusher.
Yep.
Sure. And you got to understand too, there's so few corners as good as Surtain that the vast majority of defenses are some form of zone. Okay. It really isn't man coverage. Not really. Every now and then, occasionally. But Mace, I don't know, zone 65, 70% of the time in the NFL because you can't find guys like Surtain all the time. So you can't count on it. So what is the use of a unicorn if you can't even use them? That's why I was praising Sean Payton for having Pat Surtain at least try to see what he would look taking back punts, because you can put a valuable weapon out there. And this is not to denigrate Surtain for being great. It's just the reality of the situation. It's why corner is maybe the fifth most important position after quarterback, left tackle, pass rusher, and I'd say now wide receiver. Really, seriously. I'd say wide receiver is more important than corner.
Receivers are important, but they're easy to find is the thing. Like every year we talk about, oh, this guy looks great getting out there and developing. Receivers are kind of with running backs. They're not hard to find if you're looking for really
Well, neither are cornerbacks though, Mace. Yeah. They're not hard to find, and you can find them. Corners
are a lot harder to find than running backs. Good corners or receivers.
Not when you're playing mostly zone defense. Not when you're playing, the defenses that are mostly played in the NFL. Not really, no.
I don't know. I kind of agree more with Mace on this one. I do think it's a little bit harder. I mean, look at how many running backs are still available on the market that are actually like pretty dang good. I can't tell you of any corners.
Because the running back is like the 10th most important position on the field. It's gone that low. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, receiver's important. I'd say receiver is kind of in those top 5 positions, but you're also looking at kind of the scarcity of talent and how it translates. College football has no problem producing receivers who can come into the NFL and do some good things, and generally do them right away.
You're not about it.
Corner. I mean, that's why you corner. Those are hard to find. I mean, because it's like anything. It's like QB. It's like hit or miss. I mean, you could end up with Surtain or Sauce Gardner. You could end up with J.C. Horn, who went right ahead of Surtain and has been nothing for the Panthers.
Well, he's been injured, though, so we'll see what he's like if he's ever healthy. But he's been hurt, J.C. Horn. I know what you're talking about. But that makes, again, that's why the vast majority of defenses are arranged so you don't have to have that one-on-one coverage, because the wide receivers in general are, better than the corners.
Well, they're also arranged that way because they're trying to avoid getting the top taken off of them. They want to force the opposing quarterback to dink and dunk down the field and then set up for a stop in the red zone in the compressed area of the field.
I can tell you is if you went for a quarterback and it didn't work out, you wouldn't have had to be you would just draft another quarterback again. If Patrick Surtain was really, and he is really that good, if he was really that valuable, you would not have had to make the massive sacrifices in terms of draft picks to get Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. You wouldn't have had to do it. And had they drafted Fields, they wouldn't have done it. So they would have been building other places. And if you didn't like Fields that year, you could have gone with Mac Jones. And if you don't like those two, you're going to stink again. There'll be another couple guys next year, but just a couple of guys. The thought that there's 7 or 8 guys at quarterback in any draft is just ridiculous. There's not. You really can't wait till the 2nd, 3rd round. If you want to take a flyer on guys in the 4th round and deeper, whatever. You can do that every year, but that's a terrible plan.
How did we all come back to the quarterback position again, by the way?
Football.
This is so fun.
It's football.
You just took the words literally out of my mouth. I'm like, oh, look at where we came to.
It's
How
football.
funny bringing back to this conversation.
The relative value of quarterback compared to any other position is ridiculous. What you gave up for Russell Wilson is staggering. I mean, it is absolutely staggering. So when I hear people just blindly defend Russell Wilson, I mean, I don't know what to do. I mean, I'm not even bagging on Russell Wilson, but the expectations of what you gave up for him are Super Bowl, guys. Super Bowl. Super Bowl. Super Bowl. Super Bowl.
Can they win a Super Bowl with Russell Wilson? That's
what do you think?
Answer.
What do you think?
My heart.
This year. We are going to find out this year. That's what I'll say.
Can I tell you something? So I'm on my vacation, and it was wonderful. But one of the things I love doing on vacation is sitting around the couch and do a whole lot of nothing. That is an enjoyable part of the vacation. And I stumbled on the NFL Network, and it was the Bills-Dolphins game in 2022, where it was played in Buffalo with snowballs all over the place. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching Tua Tagovailoa and Josh Allen just go at it. I mean, I'm looking at these 2 young quarterbacks with their unbelievable weapons, Tyreek Hill and Diggs, and going up and down the field with snowballs being pelted. And they're scoring. You remember that game? It was an unbelievable game by Miami.
Awesome.
Awesome
game. Of
the
year.
And you watch this game and you're looking at it like, holy cow.
Yep.
Can we really? So you just tell me, if you think of that game, you remember it, do you see Russell Wilson like those two? Like Tua or Josh Allen playing in a game like that in the future? Do you?
It's me going between my head and my heart on this because I feel like he's going to win comeback player of the year somehow and things are going to be absolutely crazy and Denver's going to turn wild. And then I think back to what we witnessed last year and I'm like, okay, even a better Russell Wilson can't compete with those 2 guys.
Because here's what happened in this game.
Well,
you got to make less than a minute to go, drive 40 yards, make a clutch play. The game's on the line, last minute of the game, before the half, 3rd downs. You got to pick. I mean, you got to watch this game and see what these guys had to do to keep their teams going. I mean, you got to make some pretty freaking amazing plays throughout the entire game, not just a series or 2. You've got to be able to make these plays the entire time. And this is just to keep up with those 2. Mm-hmm. I'm just talking about those 2. Never mind Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, of course, or Trevor Lawrence, or Kenny Pickett. Watch out for Kenny Pickett.
Okay. I will say this to answer the initial question. Before the last 2 games of last season, I couldn't have seen Russell Wilson being able to do that. But Jerry Rossberg and Justin Allen, to their credit, allowed Russell Wilson to start doing the things that made him Russell Wilson again. I mean, you look at the play where he gets outside of the pocket against the Chargers and hits Jerry Jeudy deep. Those were the types of plays that made Russ.
Awesome.
And we didn't see them
Mace,
until Hackett got fired. And I think Sean Payton will have more of that.
If you think the second half of action against a team that should not have even been playing their starters, they stupidly were.
It was the second quarter. It wasn't the second half. It was the second quarter that he made that play. Come on,
it was with 30, there was 40 seconds to go in the half, Mace. There were 3 completions in a row for a touchdown.
They still had their starters out there then.
Okay. Yeah, really motivated starters. Really fired up guys. 40 seconds left to go in the half. Why are we even playing this game? Oh, he made it. Oh, a good catch. Oh, it's 2 plays later. It's a touchdown. All right. So everybody was looking at Staley in that game like, what are you doing? which was Brandon Staley, the coach of the Chargers, which was a fair freaking question. And by the fourth quarter, he had pulled off all the starters. So you had unmotivated starters, a confused coach, and then subs at the end of the game. And yes, you had a nice pass from Russell Wilson to Jerry Jeudy. Jeudy, by the way, broke off his route and smartly just kept running down, and Wilson made a good pass. Now,
which is what his receivers always did in Seattle. They knew to break off their routes, and that the freelance was when magic happened. They understood that.
Mace, I'm with you. Let's see that. If we see that magic all year, then that's what I'm talking about. But let's just frame it in the proper context. Mace, did you want Jerry Rosburg to be hired full time?
I would have been okay with it.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, on that note, we absolutely need to move on.
The press conferences would have been sensational.
And the product on the field would have been questionable. Okay, Mace, you wrote an article on DenverSports.com on Kyle Freeland because we saw a little bit of a shoulder scare this weekend. What can you tell us?
Well, I mean, he's going to have more testing this week on it just to be sure. The things that the x-rays didn't reveal any broken bones because you looked at it and you thought, okay, did he fracture his collarbone? No, he apparently didn't do that. He dislocated the shoulder. The shoulder got popped back in. But I mean, you look at it for the Rockies right now. I mean, they don't have Herman Marquez. Mm-hmm. They don't have Antonio Senzatella. Marquez had Tommy John. Senzatella has been on the 60-day IL. He didn't need Tommy John, but I mean, that was the only good news that came out of that. Ryan Feltner hasn't pitched since May because he took a line drive to the head, and he's been and was on the concussion list, and he's been on the IL. I mean, this is, we could dive into all the deeper issues of the Rockies and why they're struggling, but they had no margin for error this year. And then you took out starter, and now another starting pitcher potentially in Kyle Freeland. I mean, the core thing here for them is they just do not have enough pitching. They were on a knife's edge even going into the season. They needed everything to break right. And not only has one thing gone wrong, it's been an avalanche of things that have gone wrong for their pitching staff. And it's tough to see. I mean, Freeland, if you are looking at the big picture and you look at the Rockies staff, which is poor, and you look at Kyle Freeland's numbers, maybe you say, okay, 1.447 WHIP, 4.72 ERA. It's not impressive. He is by far the most reliable component of the Rockies pitching staff. And
a fan favorite.
And it's not close. Yeah. And part of the reason why is because he's a fan favorite. He grew up in the Denver area. He's one of the few people who isn't scared by pitching at elevation. And
you should note too that the first two picks of the Rockies in the draft that's going on right now as we speak were both college kids.
College pictures.
So they're not high school prospects, they're college prospects, which means they assume 2 years they should be up with the team. Yeah. And so and we'll see, but that's where they're at. The MLB draft is so crazy. You really don't know how anything is really going to work out. But it does say something when they take college kids over high school kids that high in the draft, meaning they really want these guys to develop quicker.
D-Mac, any word on Henry?
Harry! My guy Harry Gustin.
Started with an H.
My guy, I talked to him over the weekend. He is hoping that today is the day that he goes before round 10, something like that. He's had talks with 7 or 8 major league teams, and the Rockies are not one of them. So the Rockies are likely to miss out on a really talented left-handed homegrown guy who was a stud in the Big West for the University of Hawaii, unless they really get their act together. By
the way, did you see the glimpse of the Rockies, the draft room yesterday during the draft?
No.
3 people. There are 3 people in there. You look at almost every other draft room, and you've got scouts that are in and out. You've got, farm directors in and out, all sorts of people. The Rockies, it gave me vibes of the scene in Moneyball early on where they're sitting where you have some older guys sitting around and they're debating how a player's significant other determines whether they're confident enough to be a successful player.
He's got an ugly girlfriend.
Yes.
Confidence. By the way, I went to an Oakland A's game on my vacation.
Tell me about it, because I'm going next month. When the Broncos play the Niners, I'm going to the A's game the night before. That's my plan, because I have to get out there one last time. But tell me about it.
Well, we might have made a mistake that I suspected was a mistake. We spent a lot of money for like good seats. Not necessary. Really, in all honesty, my wife is a little particular about doing the weasel move for seats. So I just want to make things relatively simple. But you can easily just buy basically any seats. The ushers don't even look at you. You can sit basically wherever you want. And it is by far the most charmless stadium for a Major League Baseball team. The field itself is all right. The field itself, it looks nice and all that. And it was a very low attended game. Shocker. They lost 8-7 to the White Sox in a pretty entertaining game, actually. I got to give the A's fans credit. They're different than the Rockies fans. So the Rockies fans just kind of stupidly show up, hashtag I'm the problem, right? 35 to 40,000 sold out fans. They don't do that in Oakland, which means the only people that actually go to the games, they're actually real fans. They're not fake fans. There's a lot of fake, phony fans that go to Rockies game because of how charming the ballpark is. Well, this ballpark's a heap of garbage. So there's nothing charming about it. And the team's even worse than the Rockies. So you know what you get? You can't say they should boycott, because they actually already are boycotting. They seriously are.
They had a reverse boycott one night, and they got like 29,000 people showed up.
Yeah, I thought those A's fans, I want to give them a big pat on the back, a tip of the cap. They have banners that are ripping on the owner. They're encouraging the team to have new ownership. These are banners in the stadium. Okay, there's chants and cheers. It's kind of, it feels actually like a very positive vibe from the fans that are there. And there's a lot of really scrappy players on the A's. I mean, they are trying their hardest, but you cannot get over the fact that this is where the Raiders play. If you know anything about Oakland, it basically is it made a decision back in the day to have shipping, not tourism. San Francisco did not have enough back area for trucks to have shipping when the shipping lanes got bigger. Oakland did. So that's why Oakland became an industrial city and San Francisco is a tourist city. Well, that might have been a good idea in the 30s, right? Like when you don't know anything, but obviously time has proven that's bad. So you have a very industrial shipping area, and that's where your ballpark is, like right near the shipping lanes. So I mean, it's absolutely soulless in terms of charm. I mean, it is terrible. And the stadium itself is decrepit. It's falling down. I mean, it is a trip because most of the major league ballparks now are filled with charm. They're unbelievable. And I've been to Oracle Park. I've seen a Giants game, and that ballpark is ridiculous. I mean, the bowel of that ballpark and all the charm of that place is off the charts. And Oakland is the exact opposite. But they do have loyal fans, and they deserve better.
Well, Mace, I hope you're really excited to head down to the A's facility after that history lesson we got from D-Mac. We do appreciate you.
I am, because I've actually never been for a baseball game. I've been many times for football games. I mean, let me ask you this, D-Mac.
Yeah.
Does the concourse still have the combined aroma of marijuana and garlic fries? Because that's what I'll never forget when I would walk around before every Raiders Broncos game I covered, and then a Panthers Raiders game once, and it was the smell. I'll never get that smell out of my head.
California, the smell of marijuana is literally mingled with everything. So, not very. But who are we in Colorado to throw stones in glass houses?
Do it.
All
Do
right,
what you
all right.
want.
Mace, I do appreciate you. I know when I texted you this morning, I was like 15 minutes. It always ends up being longer, but it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure to see you guys.
I told you he had nothing to do.
Mace, go enjoy your vacation, okay? Work
All right.
remotely, all right? We will talk to you later. We will
Bye,
bring in Jake Shapiro, though. Good morning, Jake. Love the hat. At first, I thought it was Broncos hat, and I was like, wow, Jake, didn't expect that from you. Real quick. I know.
Big Copa Oral win last night, Rachel. Team USA, let's go. Team USA soccer.
Also, I just saw Megan Rapinoe will retire after that. Breaks my heart a little bit. It's been so fun to watch. We are going to skip over most expensive ticket today just because we obviously talked Broncos a little bit longer, but we will get into what happened in Vegas this weekend, Jake. So hit us with all the details. Peyton Watson, I'm getting excited about him. I really am.
Yeah, the Nuggets played twice. They played last night and they played Friday. They play again, I think, on Wednesday. They've lost both games. The first game they led for most of it, and last night was not as pretty. But it's kind of interesting to see Peyton Watson in particular play for this summer league squad with the Nuggets, because last year he was a deep role player, right? He was a bench guy. With UCLA, he was a bench guy. He hasn't had a starring role since high school, and really any guy who plays in the NBA had a starring role in high school. So it's the first time we've seen against really hardcore competition, Peyton Watson kind of experiment and be the fulcrum of an offense. He has looked fantastic. He has looked out of control at times. He has looked like kind of a deer in headlights and kind of, like a deer on roller skates. But he is showing some things that show how just raw he is and how much potential and how much ceiling he has. And it's on both ends, right? We've seen him on defense, and now we've seen him a little bit on offense. So that's really exciting. Jalen Pickett, the Nuggets' first second-round pick, was very solid last night. Hunter Tyson, their second-round pick from this year's draft, was really good Friday night. And Julian Strawther's had some moments. Colin Gillespie, who was part of the team last year, he was really solid last night. So we're seeing some nice things from their players across the board. Who cares if they lose all 4 or all 5 of their summer league games? It does not matter. This is strictly development. And the cool part from like a Nuggets fan note standpoint, Aaron Gordon, KCP, DeAndre Jordan, Michael Malone, Calvin Booth, all the heavy hitters, Christian Brown, are there with the Nuggets, supporting their teammates, supporting the young guys. And Michael Porter Jr. was there yesterday. He was putting up shots after the game even. So we love to see it.
Oh, I think that's one of the best parts. And it really just shows how close the bond is for a lot of these guys. And that's what enables you to win a championship. Obviously, a few other things have to go your way for sure. But when you have a really close-knit locker room, that definitely is an added bonus, D-Mac.
And I think one of the glue guys is DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Jordan was interviewed by Katie Wingy, and he said we would be out here to support these guys. And I bet you in the group text, it was DeAndre Jordan saying, let's go, boys. We'll see you here for a couple days in Vegas. By the way, you don't have to twist anybody's arm to spend a couple days in Vegas. Most people like doing it. And I just think it's just tremendous that so many of the guys actually showed up to support their fellas. I was very encouraged that Colin Gillespie played better in game 2 than game 1. I was a little bummed that he didn't shoot a little better right off the bat, but he's a two-way guy anyway, so he'll be up and down. I'm not holding my breath. I just like Colin Gillespie. I'm kind of rooting for him. Hunter Tyson, interesting. Yeah. That's going to be the most interesting guy. He may be the sneakiest contributor of the year. Peyton Watson is going to be a regular in the rotation, the end, period, off the bench rotation, but he'll be one of the 4 or 5 guys off the bench on a regular basis. Hunter Tyson's going to be really, really interesting because he's got some skills that nobody else really has and size to go with it. So that to me has been the most revealing thing. I think Strawther will come around. I think he just has kind of the yips right now, and he may need a little bit of time to develop. But don't forget who Hunter Tyson is. He spent 5 years. I mean, how much older is Hunter Tyson than Peyton Watson? 4 years? 3 years?
Hunter Tyson's older than Peyton Watson, Zeke Najee, and I think one other current Nugget. So, yeah, guys that have been around for a while, D-Mac. But, yeah, just to note on Gillespie, he had a catastrophic leg break just a year ago. So for him to be at this point is already a success. So getting Colin Gillespie up to speed is going to be a process in itself, and it's going to require some patience, which is part of the reason why they have Jalen Pickett, another option to be their third string guard. Hunter Tyson, like you're saying, a 6'8" guy who can shoot the crap out of the ball. That's an interesting proposition. He also has got some hops. But we can't read too much into the shooting percentage in Summer League. Christian Brown shot, like I said, we had this show last week, like 36% last year's rookie year. He shot 15% in Summer League. Like the Summer League shooting percentages aren't necessarily the end all be all. So I'm not worried about Julian Strawther, particularly when you consider the fact Julian Strawther goes from, oh, that's the first round pick, we better guard him, to Julian Strawther's the fifth best guy in the court every time he takes the court with the Nuggets. So I'm not too worried about these young guys. What I am a little bit worried about, and this is a gripe I had last year with the Peyton Watson pick, is going into last year, I knew the Nuggets would be competing for a championship. You used a 15th roster spot on Peyton Watson when you essentially knew he was not somebody that was going to contribute to your team that given year. Next year, you have two of those guys, Jalen Pickett and Hunter Tyson. You have 2 second-round picks who are very unlikely to contribute to your team next year in your championship window. Can you find a way to find enough rotation pieces and depth out of Holiday, out of Jackson, out of Watson, out of Najee, out of Chanchar, where you're not panicking over what to do with Hunter Tyson and Jalen Pickett? I think that's one of like the sneaky big questions going into the Nugget season. So when you look at the next couple Summer League games, you're still watching these younger guys and saying, which one of these is going to mesh out as a rotation player?
By the way, I just got to say this real quick. Anybody who is dogging on Victor Wembanyama after his first game is an idiot. This guy is going to average 27 points at least for his career. He is going to be a slam dunk Hall of Fame player. He is ridiculous, but his team may not be successful just with him. But individually, he is going to put up some crazy numbers. Crazy numbers.
27 though, D-Mac.
27. I think he'll average 27 for his career.
Okay, well, that's still a little high. I would give you maybe like 20.
Ridiculous. And he can get that 8-9 foot turnaround shot anytime he wants, which is very Jokic-like, which what he can do as well. He's a better 3-point shooter than Jokic, and he can get that shot anytime he wants. He's an unbelievable ball handler. He's just a little spindly, but he's going to block a ton of shots. He's really a point guard, guys. Here's the deal with Wembanyama. He really is a point guard. He's not really a center. So it's going to create some weird confusion. But that dude is going to put up some redonkulous numbers.
He's a small forward. Kevin Durant and LeBron James have averaged 27 points per their whole career. This season, Victor Wembanyama is going to come really close to the NBA blocks record. He's going to get like 3-4 blocks a game. It's going to be ridiculous. I'd be shocked if he averaged more than 16 points per game. I think he's probably going to be hovering between 13 and 15, somewhere in that range. I think over the course of his career, he will become a guy who scores 25 to 30 points a game. But this year, it's going to be a little bit of a work in progress. That's to be expected out of someone who's 18. And the funny part about that game, D-Mac, that second Summer League game, I've watched a lot of Victor Wembanyama because I'm obsessed with this stuff. That was just like a B+ game, a B game from him. That wasn't even like a blow the crowd away 27-12 game. So you have to also factor in they're only playing 10-minute quarters. So we had 27-12 in a 40-minute game, which is pretty impressive.
No joke. Okay, well, of course, we'll keep everybody updated with what goes on. Jake, I saw your text in our group chat. Is there something I need to know about the Rapids?
Yeah, so there's a couple interesting things going on. One, according to the Denver Post, they're loaning a guy from Brazil, and I just don't know his name off the top of my head, but he's a center forward or striker. Okay. If the Rapids want to buy him, it'll break a club record of $5 million. So they're finally getting their striker. They've scored their first 2 goals in 6 weeks over the weekend, and they won a game for the first time at home in over 300 days. So Things are looking up for the Rapids. They made a trade last week for Andrew Gutman from Atlanta, and that was a solid move. There's also some stuff going on with the stadium, which was also reported in the Denver Post. So some interesting stuff going on with the Rapids. It's really nitty gritty and in the details for those who are not necessarily interested in soccer.
What's going on with the stadium?
That's Max like, wait a second, I'm interested.
Well, you got my interest. What are they doing in the stadium?
Because
we have to check bubonic plague. So
KSC is trying to buy 88 acres around the stadium for free from the Commerce City government, who owns that land, because they're mad that their development has never took place. So now they're claiming if they have more land, they'll be able to make that development happen. So essentially it's just them trying to make, Rapidsville, like Montfortville over by the Rockies happen. They've never gotten that project off the ground. It's long been a plan of the Rapids Brass and KSC. But all of it's interesting in the context of the Broncos, because the Broncos are probably going to undertake something similar. And again, the Rapids have requested this land for free after years of the Commerce City government not doing anything with it, according to the Rapids.
Okay, let me explain what that's all about really quickly. What happens, this is not for the Rapids. This is for all the playing fields that are around the Rapids, because there are youth soccer and lacrosse tournaments there virtually year round. And if you put up a few hotels, they'll sell out. They will absolutely sell out if they build those restaurants and hotels, because families are looking to stay. It's these playcations. When you watch your kid play, those tournaments are already happening. I don't know, 30 fields, maybe not 30, but 20 fields around the place itself. So this makes absolutely perfect sense. And there's no place to stay like right there. So when all these we've been there. I've been a parent who's played in tournaments. Now, obviously, we live here, no big deal. But we've seen what happens there. It's crazy how many kids and families are there. And I'm sure they just want to build that up. And I've been to other areas, guys, in the country where they have built up stuff like that. It's unreal, with hotels and training centers. There's a place in Georgia that has like a water ski park, which is nuts. They have like a loop, like a car, like in San Francisco, and you just hang on to the thing and it takes you around the loop and you're like water skiing or wakeboarding. I mean, it's freaking awesome. So you can't do any of that because that's interesting. They don't have the rights to the land right there.
Well, they have some of the rights. They just want more, because most of the land has been used now on those fields.
Yeah.
And you talk about these complexes when you play youth baseball or coach youth baseball or have parents that are in youth baseball, you're around these facilities quite frequently. But one more Rapids note, and this isn't about land ownership. This is a cool one. Rachel, the Women's World Cup is 11 days from today. The captain of the team, our very own Lindsey Horan. Lindsey was practicing with Rapids 2 over the weekend, and her former coach, who is the Colorado Rush coach, who's now the coach of Rapids 2. So Lindsey getting involved with the Rapids. She's always involved with the Rapids. We love to see her. We're going to be cheering her on in 2 weeks' time.
It's so exciting. No, for sure. I saw this question. Nuggets and Avs moving up there to practice, ? We will answer that question tomorrow. Jake, thank you so much. Huge shout out to Andrew Mason as well. DMAC, always a pleasure. And everybody in the comments, we'll be back 10:30 tomorrow morning. See everybody then. Have a wonderful Monday, everybody. Bye.